Hello, and welcome to Tavern Chat. I am your host, Eric Tenkar, your bartender in the OSR. So today, we had almost like This Week in Gaming Stupid. Today, we have some good news in gaming. And by the way, for those that have commented that the volume was low on some of the prior episodes, I've been tweaking with the settings because it has been hot as fucking hell. And I've been using the AC, and people are complaining about the AC droning in the back. So right now the AC is off. The mic gain is around 50%. It should sound fine. If it doesn't, I'm sure somebody will let me know in the comments below. So, first things first. Now this is the one that's the ongoing saga. Ernest Gary Gygax Jr.'s Marmoreal Tob campaign starter. This Kickstarter, which has been an albatross on the gaming community for a number of years. And I'm going to say what I've said frequently on this one. This isn't a one-man show. Although all we're hearing from is Benoit, Ernie's name is the one that's on the tin. And I understand, even according to Trollord Games, that Ernie has basically walked away or washed his hands of it. Again, it's both names on the tin. So fail or succeed, this is still something that involves Ernie. I know there's going to be some apologists out there that are going to be upset with me for saying that. But it's true. Now, if it succeeds, and again, Ernie gets to say, hey, it succeeded and we got all this stuff out. But if you got all it out, the only one doing work on it right now is Benoit. So Benoit, Trollord Games had taken over this Kickstarter on the fulfillment side because really what this Kickstarter needed was somebody who could, be organized, set a timetable, set deadlines, and get production done. And Trollord Games can get production done. All right, they didn't have to invest much money in this project. They're investing man hours. Man hours does have a cost, but it doesn't cost the same as taking money out of your bank account to produce something or make something whole. So the reason why Trollord Games could actually do what they're doing, which is getting this Kickstarter into the hand of backers after years of delay, is because Ernie and Benoit did something that was smart, especially for the time frame. They took the money and they put it into a business account, and they only touched that money for expenses that involved the Kickstarter. That is why you will never see City State of the Invincible Overlord ever come to completion, because there's no money. The money is pissed away, and nobody can come in and spend the 30 or 40,000 plus whatever shipping probably to make that one whole. I've got that quote. It's not me pulling a number out of my ass. I got that quote from a publisher in this community. And that was a couple of years ago, probably about, 2 or 3 years ago. Definitely prior to COVID. That the cost to make the City State of the Invincible Overlord whole, to actually get that out and published, would require the White Knighting Company to invest $30,000 to $40,000 of their own money. And you're not getting that back out of City State. But I digress. Let's move on to the Marmoreal Tob update. Benoit, when he was told, hey, Trollord Games, we're going to put this shit out. We've got it, the box is printed and the main book printed, and we're going to just get out the core stuff. Benoit said, hey, there are stretch goals that we promised, and I'd like the opportunity to get them in the hands of backers. And folks, including myself, were doubtful when Trollord Games told Benoit, well, listen, we'll give you a week deadline to get the first material to us, and if you can hit that for 1 week point, then we'll give you another week. It's a week-by-week basis, and if you miss any of these deadlines, we're going to go with what we currently have. So, last week, Benoit submitted a bunch of the smaller stretch goals that were promised, a lot of appendices and such, and actually got them in on time. This week, August 2nd, that's today, right? That's this update. So I guess this morning. Greetings from the den. Everyone will be happy to note that Chapter 1 of the Wilderness Expansion and the Wilderness Expansion map was turned over to me today. I'm making arrangements for editing on this and the material that was turned over last week. And then he goes on to talk about their Conan art chronology Kickstarter, which looks interesting, but that's not the point of this episode. So, Benoit hit the post for week 2. So now we got week 3 coming up. I'm actually psyched. This is the best news that this Kickstarter could have had, especially after the, how can I put it nicely, the social media faux pas that Ernie had made earlier this summer. So, this is good. This is sweet. And it's a sort of redemption. And I like redemption. Now, that was a surprise. When I said I was going to talk about good news in the community, that wasn't the good news I was going to talk about. This just happens to be great news that came up overnight. So, what do we got here? An article from The Guardian. And usually The Guardian is quite trashy. You know, it's like, I guess, the left version of like the New York Post. Yeah, it's just it's on the same extremes, but sometimes they do have some good stuff. How Games Workshop grew to become more profitable than Google. That's misleading. Okay, profit margins aren't everything. If Google has a profit margin, and we're gonna just slide down to this part real quick. The latest accounts show that last year the company made sales of £361 million, which is over $500 million. That's pretty sizable. Holy shit! And an operating profit margin of 43%, higher than Google owner Alphabet Group's margins of about 25%. Google's profits are probably in the trillions of dollars. The magnitude of difference in that is amazing. So margins are not everything. Okay, my profit margin on what little bit I publish is probably greater than 43% if I didn't turn the money back to the community in other ways. But I don't. If I make $200 a month, it's like holy shit. So, but that's not the good news I was talking about. The good news I was talking about is that this week, Nottingham-based company, which produces the Warhammer Fantasy role-playing brand. Now, let's be honest, though. They're not really talking about the role-playing brand in this case. They're talking about the war game, the fantasy war game brand. Because although they own the rights, they have farmed out the rights to the RPG. Right? Cubicle 7, I believe, has it. So it is not... But in any case, because the RPG isn't where the money is made. Okay? Let's talk about how the sausage is made in this case. They are not making their money on the RPG. They are not making the money on the fiction, as enjoyable as the fiction is. And by the way, if Humble Bundle comes up with another audiobook fiction for Warhammer Fantasy or Warhammer 40k, I will definitely highlight it because it's great. And I love the fiction, and to have somebody fucking read it to me is even better. But in any case, this week the Nottingham-based company, which produces the Warhammer Fantasy role-playing brand, announced all of its workers would get a £5,000 bonus after sales and profits surged during the pandemic. All right, then we go to the article. Warhammer Maker Games Workshop hands off £5,000 bonus after lockdown sales surge. Now, let's ask ourselves an important question. Okay? Why are miniatures, and that's what we're talking about here, right? With Warhammer Fantasy, with Warhammer Roleplay. Why would their sales be up during COVID? Right? Because you're not playing in person, right? Personally, the UK shut down, I think, for longer than the US did. So you weren't having in-person battles. You weren't gaming stores, right? So why would it be selling such? I'm going to guess, and they're saying it benefited for tabletop gamers escaping lockdown by fighting bloodthirsty battles with orcs, elves, and alien hordes. I think it was due to people buying miniatures to paint them. Can't go out to the movies, can't go out to the local pub, but I can have myself a pint at the house and paint my miniatures. So when COVID is over, I will have everything ready to go. I suspect that the surge is not going to continue into next fiscal year. I could be wrong with that. COVID might continue to next fiscal year at this point. We might go from Delta to Gamma to Lambda to whatever. But I do find this very interesting. Now remember, D&D sales surged during COVID. Now with that, we can say there was a lot of VTT playing. But with this, it sounds like there was a lot of solo painting. And I'm not saying there weren't people gaming, but you weren't gaming in game stores, right? And where do most of these battles happen? Some people have their basements devoted to it, but I would say it's usually in an organized fashion, and I don't think locations were open for this. I could be wrong. So, demand for the games remains strong despite its 523 stores around the world being forced to temporarily close. Games Workshop hosted online events and streamlined seminars to replace the physical meetups. But again, without physical meetups, you're not using your miniatures. But if they had these huge sales, it means there was an increase in people painting. And now, painting can be very relaxing. It's a solo activity, which is perfect for COVID, right? Is that going to continue, though? I don't know. Going to be interesting. So, folks, those are your news updates. I will tip my virtual hat to Benoit. I really, I'm very happy for Ben, and by extension, I'm happy for Ernie, because getting this thing out is going to be a huge albatross off not just them, but the rest of the community. So, well done, Ben. I wish you luck. I hope you continue pounding this shit out. And I spoke with a friend of mine earlier today who is involved in publishing, and he pointed out something that is interesting. It's just something to note. It's that part of the problem with a lot of self-publishers, and I'll admit I am one of those, okay, is deadlines. Because self-imposed deadlines don't really mean shit, right? When stuff comes out whenever it's ready, then stuff comes out whenever it's ready. But when you have somebody on top of you who says, I need this by Wednesday, then holy shit, you got to get your ass in gear. And this isn't, I experienced this in the real world, not the gaming real world, but the real world, my prior profession. I was an administrative sergeant for an inspector, and I would be the first one to say that a lot of times there would be reports that didn't become real until like, oh shit, that's due tomorrow. I got about 4 hours of work I got to put into this thing, and I got to book it in and do it with everything else because you put it aside because it's not real until it's suddenly real. And when I was working within this industry, Swords and Wizardry Light was something that I was working on, and I was spending, I don't know, 2.5, 3 hours a day tweaking it, brainstorming it, trying to figure out what I'm cutting, move stuff around, trying to reword stuff, because every letter had a value in a Swords and Wizardry Light layout. And it didn't become real until I got the phone call that said, hey, we want to run a limited batch of these, 100 copies or 200 copies, for Gamehole. And to do that, we are going to need a finished submission from you, Tenkar. It was like Wednesday, and I got the phone call. I was gardening, ripping out weeds like a Monday afternoon, like in the fall, and I get that phone call. I'm like, what? Yeah, no, no. I know you thought you had like 2 weeks. No, it's 2 days. And all of a sudden, it became holy shit, and you become really focused. Sometimes, and I couldn't set that deadline on myself. I needed somebody outside setting that deadline on me. Just something to observe, something to notice. So, on that note, folks, thank you so much. We've been picking up subscribers. We've been picking up views. I really can't thank you all enough. I really do appreciate it. We all do. This channel isn't just me. It's Bad Mike. It's Glenn Hallstrom. It's Joe the lawyer. And it's my wife, Rach. You know, we do all this not because we're getting paid for it, but because we enjoy doing it and we enjoy giving back to the community. So, I know there are times when I annoy folks on either side of the political spectrum, and I think I frustrate them even more when I realize since I don't make any money off this, you can't deplatform me. You can't. You know, you can't threaten my occupation, you can't threaten my income. So it must be frustrating. I have empathy for those that I frustrate. I do. No sympathy, but I do have empathy. I can understand what they're going through, and I take a little schadenfreude in it. Folks, on that note, we are still in the midst of the world of COVID. I'm immunized. I'm not saying that you should get immunized. That was a choice that I made after balancing out my comorbidities. It's something that each person has to individually make a decision based upon risk factors and where they're at. So, for me, for H, for my parents, it was a done deal. We had to. My son is 28. He's not immunized. You know, my brother-in-law is my age. He's not immunized. Everybody makes their own choices based upon their health and their situation. Ignore the talking heads, whether it's here, whether it's on a cable news channel, or some other YouTube channel, or whatever, on some online forum. Ignore the talking heads. Seek a medical professional whose advice that you trust, and you know, somebody who knows your medical conditions, and follow the advice that is legitimately being given to you by somebody with knowledge. Be safe, be well, God bless, roll those dice, and God willing, knock on wood. I know people doing this. Knock on wood. I'll be back again tomorrow. Who knows with what? We'll see what the world brings overnight. All right, folks.